Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a truly fascinating journey into a highly unique primary source. We're going to look at a set of handwritten notes that take ancient Hindu mythology and, well, completely reinterpret it. Because rather than just treating it as a spiritual text, the author of these notes frames these ancient stories as a striking modern manifesto. We're talking about environmentalism, systemic exploitation, and governance. It is a brilliant way to look at how old stories might actually hold up a mirror to some very current global issues.
What we're analyzing first has this incredible, raw authenticity to it. Our primary source is literally a handwritten monthly planner, but the ideas jotted down on these pages are incredibly profound. We'll be digging into the author's fascinating view of divine avatars. See, instead of viewing them solely as spiritual figures responding to cosmic or religious crises, the author argues they're actually responding to literal ecological imbalances and corrupt resource management. Okay, let's dive right into this and decode what the author is mapping out.
Which brings us to this core question, and I really want you to keep this in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer. What can ancient mythology actually teach us about modern environmental policy? I know, it sounds like a completely unlikely pairing, but as we unpack the mystery of how this author maps ancient gods to modern systemic issues, you might just find that human nature and the way we manage or mismanage our world hasn't really changed as much as we think.
So, to understand the author's framework, we first need to establish the baseline concept from the text. The notes kick things off by defining Vishnu as the ultimate protector and sustainer of the universe. And literally everything that follows in these notes stems from this one primary function. The author suggests that because Vishnu is the sustainer, his various forms, or avatars, are essentially deployed as emergency interventions to protect the natural world when it's being threatened.
Section 1. Guardians of the ecosystem.
Now, what is truly fascinating here is how the author grounds these mythical events in physical, natural protection. So, Matsya protects the life forms on Manu's ark, ensuring the sustainment of nature itself. Kurma protects a mountain from submerging in the ocean and facilitates the churning that gives life-sustaining boons. But that third point, that is where the author's modern interpretation absolutely shines. Varaha rescues the earth from a demon. But the author doesn't just call him a demon, he describes him as one who eyes for gold. The author explicitly notes that this depicts the rescue of Earth from the excessive mining of mineral resources. Suddenly, an ancient myth becomes a direct, pointed commentary on environmental extraction.
Section 2. Exploitation and bad policy.
But wait, extraction doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? The author draws this incredibly powerful contrast between two brothers in the mythology. On one hand, you have Hiranyaksha, who represents the direct exploiter of nature, literally the one physically mining for gold. But then you have his brother, Hiranyakashipu, and the author identifies him not just as a cruel father, but as a supporter of the exploiter of nature. He represents, in the author's own words, a class of powerful decision-makers. They aren't looking for resources themselves directly, but they act as custodians and guardians of the people who do. It's a stunningly accurate description of how modern exploitation is so often shielded by bad policy and complicit leadership.
And let's be real, the author notes that policymakers do not change their ways willingly. They just continue to favor overexploiting nature. Therefore, the notes explain that the aggressive avatars, Narasimha and Parashurama, represent the natural forces required to revolt against this entrenched system. The author specifically writes that Parashurama ends the clan of these mighty but biased policymakers. So the intervention here isn't just about stopping one single bad actor, it's about tearing down the entire corrupt administrative system that allowed the exploitation to happen in the first place.
Section 3. Autocracy and social decay.
So as this systemic failure really takes hold, the author describes how certain forces become incredibly powerful over time. They completely reject all possible opposing voices against their policies and work methods. The author explicitly labels these forces as becoming autocratic and states that they are represented by the figure of Ravana. What's crazy here is that the author's framing of Ravana is completely devoid of any standard religious romanticism. It is a structural, hard-hitting critique of a dictator. Ravana is described as becoming so arrogant in the hands of power that he refuses to accept any reviews or religious practices that don't support his own agenda. He's entirely driven by a too materialistic opinion. He basically creates a giant echo chamber where only his exploitative worldview is allowed to exist.
So the crucial point is, what actually happens to a society living under that kind of leadership? I want to read this striking quote verbatim from the author's notes because it's just so vivid. Under Ravana's reign, people are described as doing everything against the order of nature, eating non-edibles, too much drinking, sleeping in daytime and making merry in nights, having no regard to relationships. The author is vividly illustrating the symptoms of total societal decay. When a culture, led by its policymakers, completely loses its connection to the natural order, that imbalance infects every single aspect of daily life, right down to human relationships and basic everyday routines.
Section 4. Restoring the balance.
Finally, the author presents the avatar Rama as the inevitable, restoring force. The notes state quite simply that in the form of Rama, Vishnu crushes the false pride and terror-based reign of Ravana. It's presented almost like an autoimmune response of the universe. When autocracy, materialism, and environmental exploitation push the system just way too far against the order of nature, a balancing force inevitably arrives to crush that false pride and restore equilibrium.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer, and to this final, really thought-provoking question. We've seen how a single author used handwritten notes to turn ancient stories of gods and demons into a startlingly relevant allegory for mining, corrupt custodians, biased policymakers, and autocratic decay. So if these ancient myths truly are a mirror for our relationship with nature and power, what imbalances are we ignoring today? What modern demons eyeing for gold or biased policymakers are currently testing the limits of the natural order? It's a profoundly interesting lens to which view our world, and certainly something to think about until next time.